All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Saturday. What is today? October 17th. I have to look anymore. 2020. So, month of October is always fun. So much so that I've been having electronical issues with my Wi Fi. So, if things go wonky on here, I apologize in advance. And also, when Veronica and I just got connected, her microphone and video would cut out from time to time. So the energy is being extended on. Those of you that said good morning, good morning. I couldn't get your links up here because there's an issue with Restream and posting these comments. So today, it's going to be a fun day. Two things. First, there's some mini readings, some questions that some people have been asked, and I'm going to get to them hopefully by the end of this session. If not, for some reason, and I run out of time, then I will put them in next Saturday's session. Next Saturday's session, I also have a live person as well who wants to come on for a live reading. So we are going to do that. But today, we have Veronica with us, and Veronica is one of my students. I actually met her while doing a class last year, I think it was it?
Yep. At the end of last year, like November, December.
Okay, so I've known her about a year, and she had come in to do a free reading with some of my students. And the moment she walked in, I told her she had to get her abilities under control because it was insane. And so she started to do that this year. And I brought Veronica on today because she wants to talk about some things that came up. And instead of me doing it through text, I figured we'd put it out here on the live stream. So that way everyone else can benefit from your experiences as well. Looking at those that have already said good morning, just about every person on there has abilities. So this could relate to them as well. So, welcome, Veronica. I'm so
Thank
glad you're here. I really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, let's get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, so everything that I have questions on, I would like to talk about, happened this past weekend. I lost my aunt early Saturday morning. That was the beginning of my weekend. It was 3:38 a.m. when she passed, or I should say, took her last breath. Should I continue from there?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That happened early Saturday morning. So Monday night, I was at a friend's house. I thought he meant something. He's a good friend of mine, and he means something to me. But we were talking and having conversations, and I realized I meant nothing to him. And while I was there talking with him, somebody was in my ear talking. I can feel my ear throbbing. But of course, I was being human first, acting on emotions, and I wasn't paying attention to who was in my ear. I ended up leaving his house that night, went to bed. In the morning, I woke up with the alarm. I might have let the dog out, went back to bed, and I was asleep, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. It was just complete fear. Next thing I remember, I was in like a grocery store with my hands covering my head saying, I won't do it anymore. I won't do it anymore. And I was actually like picked up off of the ground. And then they dropped me. I was dropped. So I tried to cower down like in a ball on the floor, covering my head again, and I was dragged along the floor. I heard a commotion. I guess it was someone was there too. Like I was being drugged past somebody was standing there, and the weird thing is I couldn't see clearly, and I wear contacts. I have really bad vision, so it was almost like I couldn't see without my contacts or my glasses, so everything was kind of fuzzy. But I could tell that someone was standing there, and I was being drugged past this person. And then all of a sudden there was like a commotion, like the dragging stopped, and then there was like a commotion, and I was in my bed looking at my closet. Now my eyes were still closed. I could see my closet, and there was like a white, like flowy orb type, and there was talking going on, but I could not hear. And I realized, like, what's going on? So I actually opened my eyes, but I could just see my closet, but I couldn't see the white flowy orb. But once I closed my eyes again, the orb was there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was talking going on. I do not know what the words that were said were. And slowly the fear just kind of just drained out of me. So that was my...
We lost you for a brief second.
Okay.
All right, there we go. You're back. So I heard where we had last, or at least that I last heard, was that was my, and then I couldn't hear anything else.
Okay, so that was my experience for so like up to like Tuesday morning. That happened Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Tuesday afternoon, I felt that I needed to go to the beach. So Tuesday night, I did end up going to the beach, and I sat on the beach, and I, talked to the ocean. I cried, to the ocean. I ended up staying there for like 2.5 hours, and by the time I left, I felt just at peace. But I did notice I have a tingling now in my left ankle. I don't know if that's, I think it's something. But so that was my whole thing. And I was just like, did that all really happen? Like, it all just, sounds crazy because, the experiences that we do experience.
And that can feel that way, especially when you have any kind of spiritual interaction. You feel like you're insane, especially when no one else is experiencing it. It's one of the downsides to abilities. Everyone that doesn't have their abilities currently working, since we're all born with the ability, we can definitely all reopen it. But for those that don't have it open, then they look at it as like, well, you're lucky, or you're this, or you're that, right? You're special that you get to experience, the other side, especially when someone we care about dies, such as the situation of my son. I know a lot of parents would give anything to see them and hear their children again. But it's a curse. As wonderful as it is, it's terrible at the same time, because you feel like you're losing your mind. When you went through all that experience, especially being new to doing the work, the only thing different I would have done is I would have immediately white light and said, if this is spirit related, back off of me, especially when it came to your ankle.
Okay.
Because I still will like, wait, what's happening? If someone's around me, I literally go, did you just hear that noise? Or do you smell this? I still look for the real world situation, because not everything is spiritual activity. Right? And we can very easily be like, oh, it's spirits. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Right? Absolutely. And maybe it is. But somebody that's constantly doing that, they're discrediting the real world explanations, right? So I will do all those things still to this day. And I've been doing this work for almost 15 years. So I don't think I'll ever stop doing that. I definitely will still look for scientific reasons. In your case, that wasn't the issue. Okay. The ankle, there's a little bit there because, you do have some issues, some structural issues due to sitting behind a desk all day. Your shoulders are rounded, your neck is pulled forward, your psoas muscles are shortened, which is going to create a lot of problems through your legs, your ankle positions, like all that is there. And then going to the beach, sand is a great restrictor for us to kind of work through. And so that's going to agitate some things. Is it 100% that? No. Okay? No, it's not. And the reason I say that is because as you were telling me that story, your aunt was literally in my ear telling me everything she was trying to get you to realize.
Okay.
One, you now realize that the connection you thought you had with this individual really isn't what you thought it was. It really was a one-sided relationship. And although that's not necessarily a bad thing, and for those out there that are in a one-sided relationship, um, if it's not what you need anymore, then that's when it needs to stop. But we all get in these because we need something out of it. We need to give that nurturing. We need to make somebody feel better all the time. And so we'll gravitate towards people who need that until we no longer need that feeling to do that. And you've been doing that your entire life. So once people start to embrace their abilities, it was weird because when I caught a glimpse of myself, because the camera's up there, so everyone who knows when I'm looking up there and it looks like I'm looking at you, it's because I'm looking at the camera, obviously. Technology, right? But then when I looked down at the image, because, as soon as something moves, your eyes automatically go there. It looked like somebody else's eyes were looking at through the camera, which I thought was interesting because when they communicate through me, I don't remember what I tell people. And so when I was seeing that, I was seeing different color eyes. I don't know if it came across that way. They almost look like bright white eyes with a little bit of brown mixed in there. And my eyes are blue.
Yep.
All right, those that know me, they know I'm a goofball too. So I'll do weird things. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So, yeah, so we need certain things in our life because we're missing out, right? So we're going to gravitate towards that. And when we start to open our abilities up, we start to heal our inner self and we start to accept things for the way we want them and the way that we need them, not before somebody else. And we start putting ourselves first. And when we start putting ourselves first, we stop this well, I'm going to give all of me because that's what I need to give. So, for example, with those kind of things, it's our greatest strengths to be a very caring, nurturing, and giving person. It is the biggest strength that some of us have. But what I've discovered in more recent years is our greatest strength is our biggest weakness. So it's great to be there for somebody and always give to people and all that stuff. The problem becomes is when you lose yourself and you put all your needs behind. So I was that way for a very long time. And I was always tired. I was always exhausted. I had boundary issues. People didn't respect that part of me. And so they would always constantly ask for things from me, whether it was money, whether it was assistance, whether it was spiritual help, that constant boundary line of that Bonnie still has to be Bonnie and Bonnie still needs to do what Bonnie needs to do. And so prior to more recent years, I couldn't get past that either. With that said, I don't care who you are. I don't care how enlightened you are. As long as you still are alive, you still have something to work on. You could be the most enlightened being and nothing bothers you at all until something does. And if you ignore it, then you're ignoring it. Mm-hmm. So, I love when I hear people say, I don't know if it was spirit or not. Because then you're not just assuming everything is. And you're constantly working on yourself. Because if you're not doing that, then you're kind of being disintuned with yourself. Because I know there are things that trigger me still to this day. It may not trigger me to the same level of response, but it still is an issue. Mm-hmm. So, I will still get very frustrated and annoyed with certain situations when I think about it and I'm like, I thought I moved past this, but we didn't. And this is where we're leading into why you had that experience within that dream. Okay, so
Uh-oh.
I'm just gonna, you know me, I try
Go
not to
for it.
just rip band-aids off, but sometimes you gotta rip band-aids off, because as shocking as it might seem, it is much more real. Okay, so your aunt was reminding you of an experience that she witnessed occurring to you in the grocery store. Your abilities have always been on. You've just gotten good as you've gotten older, like I did, until you were forced to open them, truly embrace them, control them, open them. But they were always on. And so anytime that you would go into public spaces, those abilities would kick on even more. You're more empathic, at least, now that, and you're embracing, true communication. But when you were little, you are constantly talking to the wall. She's telling me you were constantly talking about the things in your closet and under the bed. You were constantly terrified. And she would hear these stories from your parents, but then also the few times that she'd be watching you and hanging out with you, she was experiencing these things. She herself, um, she herself had her ability still open. She was very empathic as well. And when you were younger, she was somebody that you could go to and you could talk about these things, even if you don't remember it right now, because I don't feel like you do. But
I
even if you don't remember, like anything past 8, you don't really remember. So, and some of that is also your abilities as well, because if you're constantly listening to them, you're not thinking, right? So it can be a blur. And that's our day to day stuff now, right? At least for me. So, so you don't remember anything prior to being 8. That's not a bad thing. You'll start to remember things and get glimpses of that information as you get older and as you're embracing this ability. You'll just kind of go back to certain times, and she's going to help you. She wants to be a spirit guide for you, even though she's family.
Okay.
You have to give her that permission to allow her to be your spirit guide because she is family. And the reason being is family on the other side will lie to us if it's what we need to hear, or if we hear the truth, we change our life in a way that would be a negative. So family will lie to us. And it's not okay, and I hate when they do that, but it's because that's what we needed. That's what we needed to hear. So for her to be your spirit guide, you have to give her that permission so that way she doesn't lie to you ever. And, she tells you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. And that's the difference. So you don't have to do that right now. You can do that, later today. Just give her that permission to be your spirit guide. Um, but so that's why you don't remember anything prior to 8 years old. A lot of people may or may not. I remember quite a bit, but I didn't remember a lot of my younger years until I embraced my abilities, because there is a lot of trauma within that timeline due to the spiritual activity as well as the life that I had. So she was a very big support system for you. Even if you didn't see her a lot, you spiritually connected to her a lot. So you always came to her in her dreams, even though, it's just astral projecting, right? And occasionally she would astral project to you. And that's why sometimes you would have these dreams about her and feel like she's in the room with you. And she's just checking in on you. And if you think back to those times when that happened, what you'll notice is the correlation between you going through crap, especially with male relationships, and you needed someone you love and trust to be there with you. So she's your biggest supporter. when it comes to relationships, okay? Because she's always been there for you for that relationship. And this is where it gets a little sensitive. So I'm going to do my best to sugarcoat as much as I can. But the reason you had that overwhelming experience with the gentleman you were with on Saturday or Sunday night is because you were vulnerable because you just lost your aunt. And she was your best friend in a lot of ways, and always has been. In a past life, she was a mom to you several times over. And that's why you always felt very connected with her, even from like a mom perspective, a mom-daughter relationship. Her on the other side, she's going to be a force to be reckoned with when it comes to you and you listening, okay? Because now you can't get away from her. So when you get these overwhelming sensations and sounds and feelings, because she's showing me Sunday night what happens, you're vulnerable, you were upset, you just lost her the day before, the morning before, in the wee hours. So you were up, you couldn't sleep, you're with her as much as you could be, and then she dies. And so your sleep, I don't think you slept until Tuesday night. She's telling me it was like 2-3 days later. So you're exhausted, you're vulnerable, and all you wanted from this person was just to hug you and tell you it'll be okay. And that's not what you got.
No.
What you got was the normal one-sided, this is what I want, this is what I'm doing. If you want to come over, great. But other than that, once you were there, it was still that separate of like just hanging out. There was no emotional connection outside of the physical stuff. And that's great. Physical connection is wonderful, but it's not always what we need. And you're getting to a point where that emotional connection you're looking for is not coming through with the relationships you have. Your daughter, absolutely, she does her best, but she's at a point in her life where she's just kind of doing her thing too. So, she's just trying to make things work. With her abilities as well, that's causing her to make some shifts and changes too. And so you two are pretty much alone on islands waiting to be rescued. But you're not being rescued. And a lot of that has to do with ourselves. No one can truly rescue us. We have to rescue ourselves. And we do that by shedding things that are not good for us and embracing those things that is. And so finding a relationship that enhances you, doesn't hold you back, isn't one-sided, isn't constantly trying to pull you down, because as you grow, now you're changing and he doesn't like that. So no, that's a problem. You need to come back down here. That's the kind of relationships we tend to gravitate towards because of the fixing mentality, but they're not good for us. We could stay in it and it'll be a struggle all the time. Or we can let it go and rescue ourselves. We internally have to be okay. And it's funny because until I met Dave, I was a fixer. And a lot of that had to do with my own journey as well, my own abilities. But I got to a point where I was like, no, I'm tired of this bullshit. You need to be happy on your own, damn it. I can't keep making you happy. If my ex-husband hears this, he's going to be like, right? But yeah, I mean, can we have fun together? Absolutely. Can we enjoy things together? Absolutely. But if you are the sole reason somebody else is happy and you have to be their happiness all the time because they can't make their own happiness or be alone and be okay. Like you and I can go to a restaurant and eat by ourselves. That's no big deal. Do we want to do it? No. But we'll do it. A lot of people won't. And so we would gravitate towards those people that need us. And it's all that we knew. Until we turned insidewards and said, hey, my needs aren't being met. And if that person can't meet those needs, that's the hardest part, because then we have to walk away and then we're the bad guy, right?
Mm.
So, but this is a natural progression for anybody who, one, embraces their abilities, because we're the worst fixers of the world and we still will be. We'll just change it to a different way. And two, those that are truly hurt and lost and has a lot of trauma. I saw this recent thing that said extreme independence is a form of trauma as well. So a lot of times when we think of trauma, we think of being like, physically assaulted or physically abused or, stabbed, raped, all
Mm.
these terrible physical things. But there's also that other side of it, that being extremely independent is a trauma response that we had to embrace because of the life we had. That is why I'm extremely independent, and I have been for a very long time. My upbringing forced me to be that way. And in some ways, that's trauma, because then I couldn't be a kid. I couldn't
Right.
be a teenager. And then when I did, I was a terrible person for doing that. So then instantly you're wrong. So now, okay, well, I need to be this strong, independent person, which again is a form of trauma. More emotional, some physical, but it's all trauma. We're all trying to deal with trauma, right? Because life can be very terrible. It really can.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's a lot of information coming at you. Sorry. Oh my God. Okay, so back to you. All right, so
Yeah.
so all that happened, right? Whatever I said, she said about that relationship, and you needed to be woken up, because if that didn't happen, and in that moment you weren't begging, and you weren't begging, but emotionally and internally you were begging for him to give you what you need,
Mm.
and you made a
Yes.
comment, hey, I just want this, and he still couldn't do it, right? That forced you to be like, you know what? I'm done. I don't know why I'm holding on to this relationship. I knew for a while this wasn't where I really should be, but it was convenient, and it was somebody, and it was safe, and so it fit the needs. But she didn't want you to stay there and fit those needs, because the problem is even when it just comes to friendships, if we're holding on to relationships that are one-sided, it doesn't allow new relationships to come in, because we're exhausted. There's
Yeah.
very limited time in the day for most of us. Most of us, you're either at school or you work, right?
Right.
That's majority of our world. There are some that don't work, but then they work because they have kids, or they're dealing with the house, or they're stressing out because they're not working and they need money. So they're working their mind nonstop. So we're living in this world where we don't really have time for any of ourselves. And I don't care if you sit at home and you don't have to work. You're literally doing something all day. You're not sitting there just watching TV. So because of that, having one-sided relationships stops us from seeing and experiencing new ones, and allow those people that we want in our life back into our life. So, just the layers. I'm sorry. So you correct that issue for those that are watching as well, through the white light technique, that I learned from the spirit world, to push negative energy and ill will energy away from us. Because regardless if they're alive or dead, it's still energy.
So
And
energy.
when we do that, it will push even friendships out of our world. It doesn't mean they're completely gone, but they're not controlling our day to day life anymore. You may not get a text message every single day anymore, or throughout the day. And that's okay. But as people, and especially as empaths, as soon as that happens, you want to hold on to it like it's your home, like it's gold. Like, oh no, I can't let this go. This is, oh my God, what's wrong? What did I do? Why did I offend this person? You didn't. They just weren't serving the purpose that you had them serving at some point in time. So
Yeah.
the loneliness that you feel, you're going to always feel.
never going to go away.
It's never going to go away. You will feel this way because of your abilities.
Okay.
Even myself, I know people love me. I know my family loves me. Some of them in their own ways, but I know they love me. And I know Dave loves me. I don't feel it. That's the problem. And so if we don't feel it, we can seem disheartened. We can seem heartless, as my ex-husband used to say. You can be perceived as someone who's just like, well, she'll be fine. She doesn't get offended. That's just not the love part. That's just being offended. Like, oh, she'll be fine. She won't be offended by that. The problem is we are. We just don't say anything. And the reason it's hard to feel love when you have abilities is because everything's energy. And as we're surrounded by all these spirits, the physical person in our life who might be sending love energy to us, we're not feeling. There's a wall there, a wall of energy. So that energy, love, has to get through. And it makes it very difficult. And it's why yourself and even myself has to touch everything. Walk through the store, there goes your hand all the way down the clothing, because we have to touch something physical to truly feel that energy within ourselves. But the problem with that, even with a partner, even if you've a new relationship, obviously that's more exciting and there's more touching involved. But then when you're in a relationship for a long period of time, and especially live together, and you touch less or you interact less because now you see them at the end of the day versus all day texting,
right?
You lose that sense of connection because of what's around us. And it makes us feel even lonelier and less loved. And so it's a constant reminder, even for myself sometimes, that I am loved and that it's okay. It's okay. I know these people love me. I just don't always feel it. And so it can feel very lonely. So having that one great friend, having, that one great partner, Dave's a great partner. He accepts me for me, even if sometimes he does not understand me, or I freak him out a little bit when I'm like, did you just hear that? Or he heard it and he looks like around like the corner to see if he could see something fall in the kitchen, as both the dogs are looking like around the corner as well, and then looks at me like, what the hell was that? Doesn't say anything, just looks at me like,
what was that?
And then I'm just like, ghost, like, this is my house, this is my world, this is gonna happen, but it doesn't freak him out, which is nice. But yet I don't always feel that love unless he physically touches me, if he physically shows me. So it's that constant reminder. So you will always feel alone. Okay. And especially for those out there that are watching this, that are younger, and have been dealing with their spiritual abilities without understanding it, those that want to commit suicide all the time, those that just, no matter what happens, just feel so sad and so alone. You have abilities and you need to start to get it under control, and then also acknowledge that you're feeling that way, and you need somebody to touch you. You need physical touch, whatever that is, whether it's a hug, whether it's intimacy, whether it's just roughhousing, whether it's just poke, like, I'm just going to touch this. You need to find what works for you and then not feel guilty about it. So I pretty much touch everything. Like, I am probably a germaphobe's worst nightmare, because I will touch everything in the world. And right now, obviously, that's dangerous. So I haven't really been in the world. And when I haven't touched everything. But that makes it very hard, right? So you always feel this way, but that doesn't mean that you can't get a better relationship to come into your space in your world. It just means that when you start to feel like, oh, I don't know if this person even cares about me anymore, you need to take a moment, push the spirits away, and see if you still feel that way. Because when I do that, I can then feel that little bit of that connection again, that love connection, that compassion connection, and not read into things. Because even somebody who doesn't have their abilities, they'll read into things because they feel the energy as well from time to time, especially this kind of month as well as full moons. So with that said, all that too, so she's gonna get back to you. So the supermarket experience where you were down on the floor and like somebody was lifting you up. She was showing me that your dad had done that a few times in the store. And that's where I was like, okay, it's gonna get a little bit of sensitive here.
Wow.
And when I focus in on your dad's energy, like he was a very loving man, but he was also very strict and hard-handed when needed to be. And I'm not saying he physically assaulted you and abused you and beat the
Right.
crap out of you. I'm not saying that. But when he said stop and you didn't stop, or any of his kids didn't stop, that was it. Like
Mm,
the heavy hand came down and you were punished. Or if he had to literally pick you up to get you moving, he would have done that. And
okay.
in those moments when you were experiencing that, it wasn't just because, you didn't want to leave the store, you didn't get your way, as we can see, with our own kids as well as kids of the world. It was because you were being overwhelmed by the amount of spiritual activity that was surrounding you. And you just couldn't get past, you couldn't function. And whenever there was something extremely negative nearby, that instantly shut you down. It was very scary for you. It's why you don't like scary things. It's why,
Mm,
like, you'll go do a haunted thing, but you really don't want to do it. Like, you'll suck it up and watch a horror movie, but you really don't want to do it. And you're only doing it just to push your boundaries and get you past that point. But when you were a kid, there was a lot of scary things, especially in your house. And so you had a lot of fear, and that's why a lot of it is blocked out for you right now because you can't embrace it and re experience what you did because of how bad it was from a spirit perspective, not family. Dad didn't understand you, he didn't know how to help you, and he didn't have anybody to talk to about it. The only one that did was your aunt. And so she would hear some things and then she would call or she'd pop over and calm you down. But
okay.
there would be situations such as the grocery store, outside of a couple times witnessing it, that she knows that happened. And so the reason that she gave you that memory is because that is how you tend to process some situations to get you out of it. You don't just go, okay, well, I'm done with this and now I'm going to move on. You have to be physically forced into doing it and pulled out of the situation. And some of that does stem from your childhood because that was the only way you felt rescued by your family, your dad specifically, was when he physically picked you up and got you out of the situation. I'm not seeing it by your hair. You know what I mean? Like it would be shoulders. It wasn't like he was grabbing, for those that are listening, probably like, oh my God, your dad's a jerk. It wasn't like by your hair, even though that's what that memory was. It was by your shoulders. It was, under your armpits. It was like sometimes the back of your shirt to lift you up, to get you up and out. But the reason that it was the hair pull that you experience, because in a few of the moments of time in not only this life, as a kid, but in past life. So we'll talk about that in a second. But spirits always came at you from your hair, like to get you,
Mhm.
pull you back, stop you from moving away, lift you up by your hair. These nasty entities, not the positive ones, but the terrible ones. There is a demon-like entity in your childhood home, And that will torture you in a lot of ways, including for females pulling of their hair, because that can be very sensitive when our hair gets pulled, right? Especially when we have longer hair. But also, in a few of your past lives, you were tortured and pulled down, stairs and out of doors and down streets by your hair. And
Wow.
so a negative entity or a demon like entity will absolutely go for that vulnerability, because that will trigger, without really seeing those memories, that past life trauma, which then only enhances and causes us to freak out a little bit more. So she wanted you to choose to see it for two reasons. One, because that is a trauma for you of your hair being pulled. So like even sometimes when, your daughter was growing up and she pulled on your hair a little bit, it'd be like, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like even if it didn't hurt, it was like, stop, and it was because it was resurfacing the traumas that you experience. But then also that feeling of needing to get out and get away is what is going to keep you moving forward from relationships that you should not be in. So when you start to feel like that sense or have a dream where you need to, this is happening and you need this to stop, something in your life you're avoiding walking away from. And you're
Okay.
waiting for somebody to physically pull you away. So sometimes, and it sucks, spirits are very terrible, even when they love us, and give us experiences that are like, are you kidding me? Like, you couldn't have said this a different way? No, because you wouldn't have listened,
Right.
right? You wouldn't have
Right.
listened. Most of us don't. I have some people who reach out to me for the exact same thing all the time. Same answers that the spirits always give, but they're not listening.
So the answer's never going to change.
Exactly. The path will never change. So now the good news is you're embracing your abilities. You are hesitant because for a living, that's not what you do. So it makes it harder to work behind a computer and embrace your abilities because you are constantly in a struggle between left brain, right brain.
Mm-hmm.
Communication's right brain, thinking is left brain. And so if you're constantly switching back and forth, headaches, light sensitivity, aches, pains, problems, more hating your job nonstop, like, ugh, I can't be here, right? Fortunately, you're working from home due to COVID stuff. But, for those that are in the real world, such as Jamie, who reached out and asked me a question about her job, with your abilities too, like, you're going to be in the soup of gunkness. And so no matter what job somebody does, you're going to not like it. Ideally, we need to find what we truly love doing and then get control of our environment. So there's a lot there for you to unpack. And with your aunt gone, and if you give her the permission, which I feel like you already did, but if you give her the permission to be your spirit guide, she's going to help you continue on this journey and not avoid it.
Okay.
And now she won't give you such terrible dreams again. If you experience them, they're probably just for you to play out the story so that way you can move past some of that as well. And that's the thing about past lives and even current life that we don't remember. If we don't remember those particular situations and those, stories that have helped molded us, then we're always in that same pattern. But yet when we can experience it, re-experience it again, even if in a safe way, such as dreams or past life regressions, then we're able to move past some of those hurts because we now understand it and we can accept it. And when we can understand and accept, then it's just easier to move forward. It's not this mystery that still has yet to be discovered. It's like, okay, this happened. Even if it was terrible, it happened. I can move past this now because I understand it. And not just a little tiny piece, the big picture. Every
Mm-hmm.
aspect that caused certain things. And our bodies, our mind, our spirit is really, really good at protecting us. Really good. And there are moments of time that you may not even realize what you needed to do, but yet it's sitting inside you, stuck. And a perfect example of that, because I know some people, because I just felt the energy ripple of like, what is she talking about, right? So a perfect example of that is when my son died, and I came into the room because the door had not been moved since the night before. And my son's a night person, right? So he should have been up and in the bathroom or at least in the kitchen at some point. And so I thought that was very strange, you know. So when I went to check and I saw how his body was and stuff, and as I'm walking over to him, like, he can't be dead. He's got to be breathing. You know, his chest has to be moving. I had to have missed it. It has to be, like, he has to be breathing. And as I got closer and then, you know, calling his name out, you know, not getting a response, and then touched him and felt how cold and hard he was. So I knew he was dead. I dropped to my knees, obviously crying, and instantly got up and was like, I gotta call 911. I have to call Dave. You know, like, I have to get up and do what I gotta do, right? And so that's what I did. I got up and did what I had to do. And I am writing a book, so you guys, it'll be a hard read, but you will read about that day, which is in detail. But what I realized, I think it was like a year later in an MFR treatment, when I dropped to my knees, I just wanted to stay there. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to respond. I wanted to sit by his foot, by his bed with my side against his bed, and cry my eyes out for my son. That he's not here, that he died. And be in that space of complete, like, grief and sadness. But I denied myself that because I had to do these other things. And so once I was able to go back to that moment and feel that space and acknowledge what it is that I wanted to do and sit there for however long I wanted to sit there, it helped a little bit more processing his death. Because again, it's all that trauma stuck in there. So that happens even with car accidents. You know, a lot of us get into a car accident and then now their neck hurts all the time. Even after they had treatments. Years later, their neck, they feel like they still have whiplash. And it's because in that moment of the accident happened, whether they saw it or not, everything tightened up. And they never processed the imagery of what just happened. So for those that happen to see it in the rearview mirror, you know, they grip down their fist and prepare and push their foot on the brake, especially if they're sitting, watching this happen. They never got that out. So anytime they're in that intersection, anytime it might be, if it was raining, it's raining. Anytime there's a trigger, we're going back to those moments because we didn't figure it out. We didn't let the movie continue to play. We checked out to save ourselves. And then now we got to come back in, and every time we do, we feel this way. And so that physical trauma is just as horrible as emotional trauma and mental trauma. And so you have a lot of emotional trauma from your earlier years, from family, from spirits, from life. And as she helps you through that, it'll just open you up to truly be the person you want to be and be with the people you want to be with.
Okay.
Yeah. So just continue to do what you're doing, right? Continue embracing it when you can. Again, it's difficult when, you know, it's not your job, you know, or have somebody that you can practice on and work with. But anybody who, you know, wants her to practice on you and do like a, you know, email reading, you know what I mean? You guys can message me and I will pass it on to her and then she can reach out to you to potentially do that. But this will be all Veronica's choice. But if you message me, I will send it to her because she is a student and she is learning. I put the classes on hold because of the the up increases in and COVID that are starting to happen, and then also what will continue to happen because it's winter time. So, um, okay, where are we at? Oh my God! All right, it went so fast. I still can answer some of these questions that are happening, but do you have a question left, Veronica? Or
Um, I have a lot of hair falling out lately.
okay.
I didn't know if that was health related. I'm sure it is health related. I don't know if there's an issue that I need to worry about.
So it's health related, but it's stress. It's from stress.
Okay.
Um, and since your hair is one of your sensitive points,
Mhm.
that's our stress points, and where we get affected the most is wherever we have the most trauma from.
Okay.
And so yours is more your head than anything else. So that's why even behind the eyes, you'll have eye issues, throat issues, like everything here. Um, the best thing to do for that is when you are doing anything to de-stress, focus your energy coming back to your head, to your face, to your upper extremities. A lot of times we tend to go into the belly and then we push it down into the ground, but in your case you need to pull it up.
Okay.
All right. And especially now with you embracing your abilities more, most people have a difficult time being grounded and also spiritually connected and have it equally strong. Most people are either very grounded or they're very spiritually open. And the problem with that is when we're spiritually open, we're not part of this earth, which then creates health issues and problems. It's why your aunt started to lose her mind as well, and why her mind was slipping. The more and more that I am embracing the abilities, the more and more that I learn about mental health through the degree that I'm seeking out so I can work with kids and avoid labeling of ADHD, bipolar, and schizophrenia, because 99% of the time that's spiritual abilities. Um, the more your mind starts to go. So I believe cognitive dysfunction, such as Alzheimer's and dementia, is people who have abilities and their minds are going because they're spending more time on the other side. Because when you think about it, and I have a conversation without knowing what I've said, and I don't remember what I said, what does that look like? That looks like, a dysfunction. So, and yet it's not. So your aunt, the reason that, her mind started to slip was because of her own abilities as well. So that's something too that I plan to work on in the future to how to stop that from happening. Is it truly the white light and keeping it under control or not? Or am I destined to lose my mind? We'll see. Um, but yeah. So the other thing you can do is when you're trying to de-stress. I was like, you still there? I think we lost you for a brief second. All right, you might be able to hear me. I just don't see you moving. Your screen's frozen. The other thing you could do is go on the sofa and put your feet on the back side and drop your head over the side of the sofa and let the oxygen and blood flow come back to your head and see if that helps to improve the issue you're experiencing with your hair. And then you'll have to let me know or let everybody know that's watching. Okay, so it's 11. I'm going to go over just a little bit so I can answer some of these questions real quick. All right, so Michael, yes. The house that you found was the situation where your dog was at, and that there's not much you can do about that right now because your dog's not there. I do get the sense, though, that your dog is still alive. I just don't feel that it's close to where you are. Like, I would say it's a good, like, 40, 50 minutes from your drive. But I am still seeing that, because I know you asked me about this before, the person that has the dog is also a PTSD military veteran, that this dog assists with day-to-day living to help and assist with loud noises and anything that's about to happen from like a bang perspective, which then keeps the vet, the retired PTSD vet, calm. The gentleman looks like he's like in his 60s or 70s. So your dog and this gentleman will most likely die around the same time. If anything, your dog first, and then he will go after your dog. So it stinks that you don't have your pup anymore, but it's your pup's in a good place, helping somebody else as well. So, but you did find a house that the dog was at for a short period of time when the dog left because it got scared from loud bangs as well. And it's really interesting to see how your dog and this gentleman interact when it comes to sounds. It's like they instantly soothe each other because they match those energy frequencies of that scaredness, that panic. All right, Danielle. So the biggest thing about what's going on in your house and the negative slumps and feelings that you and your family are experiencing, it's really all the changes that are happening. Your abilities being empathic and listening obviously is contributing to that. The other factor that's contributing to it is you stop taking control over the house. And when you do that, the house tends to go into energy disrepair, I guess is the best word. And it's because you're tired, so you don't necessarily want to, deal with the house, but yet you need to, especially with everything that's constantly shifting and changing that's going on. Your particular family careers and things like that, the boys going to college, doing what they're doing. Two of them are going to switch and not really kind of do what they are going to college for, which is fine as long as they're maintaining and do what they need to do for bills. It doesn't matter where somebody works. You can retire and make great money in retail, even at McDonald's. Like, you don't have to have a doctor position or this position. And I know you're not like that, but sometimes we have to remind our kids it's not about a certain position title. It's about just paying your bills. Your husband goes in and out of his slumps as well, and that's where you need to match that energy. And when he goes down, bring it back up. Okay, so shift and change and bring it back up. The other aspect of it is there's just so much changes within your house, and every time it seems like you get a few steps forward, you get knocked right back on your feet again, and not in a good way. So what ends up happening is enough things shift and change financially, which then causes stress for everyone. And so every time that happens, I want you to reevaluate what's going on in your life, what you're spending money on, what the family is spending money on, and what we can shift and change. Change is scary, but sometimes change is what we need, even if it's the slightest, smallest, little, tiniest change. Okay, Jamie, so we talked about this a little bit earlier. Your abilities is not going to let you be happy no matter where you're at. You take on the negative energy of others and the environment itself. Working at a government facility, unfortunately, there is a lot of negative energy when it comes to government buildings and government mentality. A lot of that has to do with the external world and what people believe and think about the government. So you could do the best job in the world within a government facility building, and people will still be like, oh, you work for the government? And it becomes this negative response. So you're dealing with a lot of negative energy. If you stick with this particular position, this job, you'll grow, you'll continue to move up, you'll continue to change, you'll continue to make the rules you want to. And then when it's time for you to retire, you'll have a great retirement and be able to be okay because they're not going to get rid of you in any way. The downside is how you're feeling. And, can I do this? And should I do this? And it's affecting me on such a level that when I get home, it's affecting my home and it's affecting my family. That's where you have to take control of that energy and push that energy away. every day you walk into that building, you take 5 minutes and create your bubbles and your white light and put your bubbles up. You can put some stones in the corners of your space, the office area you're using. But as soon as you leave that, that's going to tend to be problematic to go to the bathroom or to an office, a meeting, the lunchroom, whatever. So the stones can be helpful for your immediate space where you spend most of your time, but that makes it quite difficult. So when doing white light, you do your office area and then you do the common areas, the areas you walk through and out, and see if that helps. Because absolutely, you can find a different job if you want to, but you're going to run into the same problem. Maybe not as fast, but still run into the same problem. All right, Terry, second husband. The biggest thing, and this is, we're going to touch more on this one next Saturday, but the biggest thing he wants you to know is that it's really okay to be happy. You tend to try to be happy and you end up trying to seek that happiness in others, and not truly be internally happy. You think you are, but when you sit down and you really kind of think about it, you're not. You're happy when you're helping others. You're happy when you're there for somebody else. So he wants you to really focus on being happy and not for somebody else. So a little bit of what we talked about earlier. You are a little sensitive. I do see energy sensitivity, which means you can sense when things are off, or you can sense when things are really good. You can walk into a place or meet a person and instantly know if they're good or not, regardless of what it looks like it should be saying, or instantly bad. So, and that energy sensitivity tends to cause some problems for us when it comes to being happy within ourselves. So, I'm going to touch it base a little bit more next weekend if I don't private message you. But he wants you to start working on your happiness. So acknowledge that and find one thing that you truly love doing for yourself and only yourself, even doing it by yourself. And then that's what he wants you to start doing. Okay, so we ran over a little bit, everybody, but thanks for joining. And next week, we're going to do another live session with somebody else. And then Halloween, probably going to do another live reading. So if somebody out there wants to do a live reading on Halloween, just reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll just do mini readings if no one wants to come on and, have their reading out there for the world to hear. Be safe, everyone. Send some love
Thank you,
out.
Bonnie.
You're welcome, Veronica. Thank you for
very much.
joining. And I will see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.